We are very fortunate to have with us Dr. Tim Krantz. He has for 45 years had experience across a wide range of specializations. He's been in academia for 25 years as a professor emeritus of environmental studies at the University of Redlands. He currently is the conservation director for the Wildlands Conservancy, California's largest private nonprofit land conservation organization. And he lives and works on the Oak Glen Preserve and is the founding director of the Southern California Montane Botanic Garden. As he's going to share with us, he is an authority on the flora of the San Bernardino Mountains and on rare and endangered plants in California. He actually lived here for over a decade in the 70s and 80s. And he has, I didn't know this, served on the County Planning Commission for 6 years, representing the Mountain District. He helped develop the wintering bald eagle census methodology for Big Bear in the 70s, and he has served on the San Bernardino Valley Audubon Society Board of Directors for more than a decade. It should come as no surprise he's an avid birder, and he has logged nearly 1/5 of the birds of the entire world on his life list. So as you can see by a quick overview of his background, he's certainly accomplished and capable, and we're very fortunate to have him with us. So without further ado, Dr. Tim Krantz.
All right. Well, it's my pleasure to be back up in my old stalwart birding grounds. I first became a birder up here. I used to make fun of birders. You know, in England and Europe, they call them twitchers. They get these weird twitches, especially when they get excited about something. But and I'm a botanist by first training, but I got into birds really through the bald eagles up here, and back in the late 70s, together with Mike Coffey and Kimball Garrett, we started the first wintering bald eagle censuses and developed a kind of methodology to do that in a systematic way. And so who couldn't get excited about birds when you're looking at and working with bald eagles? So, and then I was hooked. And I just, everywhere I would go, I would travel in the winters to South America, Central America, Southeast Asia, and everywhere, always with the focus of birds. So anyway, I'm glad to be back here to my home territory and to share with you the amazing diversity of the birds of Big Bear in the San Bernardino Mountains. And few people understand that. I mean, this is really quite a remarkable mountain range to do this. But let me back up a little bit and just talk about first how I got into this as a botanist working for the Forest Service. And I discovered over the years, and this was the subject of my doctorate in geography up at Berkeley ultimately, I discovered that, in fact, Big Bear and the San Bernardino Mountains as a whole is the most floristically diverse mountain range in the entire continental United States for any mountain range of comparable size. I mean, literally, the most floristically diverse of any mountain range in the continental U.S. We have more than 1,600 or so flowering plant species. That's more than 1/4 of the flora of California in 6/1000ths of the area of California, right? And California is known for its biodiversity. It's just remarkable. And so when I realized this is not your casual kind of plant communities around here, I had to ask, why? How did this happen? How do we explain this? And so that's the subject of my dissertation, a phytogeography of the San Bernardino Mountains, to use a fancy title. But one of the major reasons for this diversity is the fact that these mountains run east-west. You might think, so what, right? Okay, they run east-west. unlike the rest of our major mountain ranges in the continental U.S., the Sierras, the Rockies, the Appalachians all run north-south, right? Ours run east-west together with, you see the San Bernardino Mountains there with the snow on them, and then the San Gabriel's and Santa Ynez Mountains off to the west of us. And you can see on this image the snow in the high country on that north aspect of the ridge. So the fact that our mountains run east-west means that each ridge has a north side, a north aspect, and a south aspect that are remarkably different from each other. That north aspect slope, the slope right here, is going to hold the snow longer, hold the moisture, stays cooler. Whereas just over the ridge, it's hot, exposed to the sun, snow melts off quickly, and you have entirely different habitats, one side or the other of the ridge. Okay? You can see Big Bear there to the north of San Bernardino Ridge and the San Gorgonio High Country. Another factor that makes the San Bernardino so unique is we have Mount San Gorgonio just south of us, the highest peak in Southern California, the southernmost peak to have been glaciated during the ice ages. Southernmost peak to have held glaciers. And yet just 16 kilometers away, downslope from that, is the Whitewater River, the Whitewater Basin. That's 10 miles. You go from California fan palms, subtropical oasis, that is the bottom of Whitewater Canyon and Palm Springs, down to below sea level out at Salton Sea. You go from subtropical fan palms to Arctic above timberline alpine plants on San Gorgonio in just 10 miles. It's like going from northern Mexico to the Arctic tundra, 4,000, 5,000 miles in 10 miles, right? So it's just incredible diversity of topography there. Here we see Mount San Gorgonio itself, southernmost peak to have been glaciated, partly because the mountains turn east-west, so that north-facing bowl could just accumulate snow to where, the snow was several hundred feet thick, starting to form glaciers that would push down. If you've ever hiked up to San Gorgonio from Poop Out Hill, anyone done this? Poop Out Hill. Poop Out Hill is the terminal moraine of the glacier that carved its way down from San Gorgonio Peak. Several miles of glacier, right? So this is pictures taken from Dry Lake, which itself was cut off by the glacial moraines that blocked the drainage down into the Santa Ana River, ponding Dry Lake up above it. Not a bad bird place there either. So anyway, we have the southernmost peak to have been glaciated. And during ice ages, mind you, there are 6 or so ice ages. During the ice ages, the Sierras were too far north. They were so heavily glaciated, they were essentially obliterated. Their flora and fauna just became a sheet of ice. Whereas we were just far enough south to not be overly inundated with snow and ice, but still to have experienced that. And during glacials, plants and animals would be pushed southwards, and then during interglacials, they would move back northwards from Mexico. And there's a half dozen of these glacial, interglacial exchanges over the past million years or so. And each time, say, Arctic species are pushed southwards to here, and then the intertropical stuff moves northwards, all they have to do to survive the new warm climate is drop their seeds down that north aspect slope. The same goes for the subtropicals. All they need to survive the glacial episode is to drop their seed down that south-facing slope. And so each wave of glacial, interglacial just adds new species to our mountain range. And this works for plants, and it also works for birds. So here we are in Big Bear Valley, out somewhere east of Baldwin Lake, Irwin Lake, facing westwards down the length of the valley. And you can see the ridges, each ridge, Bertha Peak and Bertha Ridge to the north side of the lake. The others has that north-south aspect, and we're looking lengthwise out towards the San Gabriel Mountains in the distance there. To the right, upper right, is the Mojave Desert. So you think about it, we're on this montane island surrounded by the Mojave Desert to the north, the hot chaparral of interior Inland Empire on the south aspect. We are on this montane island. And so all these mountain species of plants and birds are isolated now on this island, separated from the Sierras by 100 miles of inhospitable desert. So reflecting that floral diversity, we have this incredible diversity of birds. Here in Big Bear, Holcomb Valley alone, we've documented more than 220 or so species of birds. 10 species of woodpeckers, 10, right? Nowhere else can beat us in terms of woodpeckers. 8 of those are breeding woodpeckers here in Big Bear Valley. 15 species of sparrows, which doesn't get some people too excited, but hardcore birders, that's something to get excited about. 15 species of sparrows. 12 of those are breeding species here in Big Bear Valley. And then, of course, we have, as illustrated here, on this is a wildflower book that I produced in 1989, a wildflower guide. We have all 3 of the western blue jays, Steller's jay, scrub jay, and pinyon jays. And Clark's nutcrackers are up here on Mount San Gorgonio. I've seen them down to Sugarloaf Ridge. I've never quite seen them here in the valley. You have? Well, that's pretty awesome. They let you know that they're around too when they're around, don't they? So anyway, I did bring a copy of this book, but I understand, and Kathy just shared with me, your newly published bird guide, and it looks absolutely awesome. So ignore my own little checklist. But suffice to say, it's got the 3 jays on the cover. This was an illustration done by Jacques Deveau, who used to live over in Fawnskin. He was an animator for Disney, and he did this beautiful illustration of the jays. So we have Steller's jays, our crested Cyanocida, same genus as the eastern blue jay, and California scrub jays. And as this is indeed Chirp Nature Center, I had to feature our own recently adopted rescue Steller's jay baby that we've named Stella. I can't tell if it's Stella or Stanley, but we're calling her Stella for the time being. And she was abandoned in a nest on our porch about 3-4 weeks ago, and then she was about to expire. There were 3 more eggs that never hatched, and the parents just took off. And so we rescued her, and we've been raising her since then. And I'm proud to say that just 3 nights ago was her first night where she stayed outside all night long, and she still hollers at me in the morning first thing, and she'll come up and sit on my head or on my shoulder and beg for mealworms or crickets, and she still has to learn how to feed herself. They have to learn how to do everything from drinking water out of the bird bath to you name it. So anyway, that's baby Stella. We also had a baby baby scrub jay. This is baby Blue, who was brought to us as a chick by her mom, Juliet, Romeo and Juliet. Romeo was a deadbeat dad. Juliet brings this starving baby in 2 winters ago, starving for food. We could tell that she was really frantic to feed this baby. She finally brought the baby in, and the baby fed from my hand. She took a bit from my hand, puts it in the baby's mouth. The baby's all like, helpless, and could barely fly. And so we've had baby Blue since then. So, and she still hangs around, and we're hoping that she'll bring some chicks to us, but she was not successful the last winter. And when you get to know individual birds like this, you really get to know them individually. They have individual personalities compared to other birds of the same species. And so that's baby Blue. We also have Chick and Dee Dee, the mountain chickadees, and we have Tipper and Topper, the oak titmice. And I've got a California thrasher, and they watch each other feed. Initially it was the titmice, and then the other birds would come around in the winter when there's nothing else to eat, and they say, that looks okay. And so pretty soon it's just they're competing for my hand. But one of our rare jays here, the pinion jay, is particularly rare, found out in the east end of the valley in the pinion woodlands. I would just bring to your attention this allaboutbirds.org link, hyperlink. If you just Google all about birds, all one word, this will pull up the Cornell Ornithology Laboratory's database and websites for all of these birds. So I would highly recommend, if you're not familiar with that, check that out, Cornell Ornithology Laboratory. And it has the distribution of the birds on that map there. And you can see that pinion jays are a little dot in Southern California, right? Generally, they're a Great Basin species, but here they are in our mountains. Now they're declining, and I've noticed that their numbers and frequency have diminished greatly since I was up here in the 80s. And so I'm not quite sure what's going on there, but it's kind of canaries in the coal mine that something might be going on. I'm not sure what it is that's causing their decline. And our other high elevation jay, the Clark's nutcracker, again, is limited. This is one of its southernmost places in North America, right at the summit of San Bernardino Ridge, occasionally coming downwards for pine nuts and other things during the fall months. And you might see it down in winter months when it's pushed down from bad weather and snow up above. So Clark's nutcracker. We have 21 species of waterfowl, ducks and geese and things. This is just a quick test for you all. You all recognize the mallard at the top left, right? And then American widgeon, down below that mallard, ringneck duck. Looks a lot like a goldeneye. You'll see that later. And then next to that is the northern pintail with the pointy tails. Cinnamon teal down there, very beautiful in male spring color. And finally, that little drab guy with the black butt is a gadwall. Little black butts. They're easy to pick out. Not very showy. Others, top left, northern shoveler. And then opposite that, we have the common goldeneye. In the middle, buffleheads. They're diving ducks as opposed to dabblers. And then lower left, we have the redhead. And finally, ruddy ducks with their bright blue beaks. And their heads go up and down when they are courting. It's like... And then American white pelicans. I love these guys. They are so beautiful. And they used to nest largely down at Salton Sea. 85% of the North American white pelicans would be down at the Salton Sea for the winter. And so to get there, they'll navigate and ride the thermals on our south-facing slopes. It causes the air to rise. And they do circles, and they'll come down and land at Baldwin Lake and Big Bear Lake. And then, get some food, and then on their way down to Salton Sea. With Salton Sea now no longer suitable habitat, there's no fish in the sea anymore, we're seeing that they're dispersing at other available habitats, including Big Bear Baldwin Lake when it's full. It's interesting to see fish-eating birds on Baldwin Lake because there are no fish in Baldwin Lake except the endangered little sticklebacks, right, which aren't much to eat, and they have these little spines that they emit when a bird tries to eat them, right? Hence the name stickleback. So I always was amused to see fishermen out there at Baldwin Lake, like when it was full. That's another one that it used to be full most of the time back in the 80s, and now it's rarely full. So we've diverted a lot of its water. Anyway, these are white pelicans. They mate for life. They're monogamous, or relatively monogamous. But I watched a pair off of Eagle Point once, and winter was setting in, and one of them clearly had a broken wing. And so the pair stuck around until we had a hard frost one night, and I went back out, and the mate had taken off, and the one with the broken wing was frozen into the ice, just the wing. And so I plodded out through the ice, breaking the ice up, and rescued the bird. It's all beak, right? So I had to wrap my scarf around it so it wouldn't bite the heck out of me. And I took it over to, we called it the Moonridge Zoo at the time, took it to the zoo, and so we kept that white pelican for some years at the zoo. It was quite the weird bird spectacle. But hawks and eagles, we have 13 species, of course. From the, did someone say they just saw a kite on the field trip this morning? They're becoming really rare throughout their range in the west. But really cool birds, and they'll hover like an angel over the prairies. The Mormon settlers called them prairie angels, and they would hover. And next to that, we've got a Cooper's hawk, and below that, a sharp-shinned hawk. And then over in the extreme upper right, we've got a northern harrier. You still see those commonly out on the east end of the valley. And our regular Jamaican hawk, or red-tailed hawk. Jamaican hawk, Buteo jamaicensis. So, and of course, we can't talk about raptors and big bear without Jackie and Shadow and the babies there. This was the eggs this past season. Also, our other fish-eating hawk, the osprey, right? And I've seen some osprey around here too recently. The eagles are not so well-mannered as one might suspect. They're known to just follow osprey around and wait for the osprey to catch the fish, and then they zoom in and steal it. It's called kleptoparasitism. And they'll habituate themselves to this, to where they'll just follow those osprey around and then steal their prey. Ben Franklin knew that eagles were not so well-mannered as one might think, and so he suggested our national bird should be the American turkey. But it ended up being the bald eagle, and it just wouldn't have sounded the same to have the Apollo spacecraft land on the moon and say, the turkey has landed, right? So, I don't know. Other birds up here, birds of the night, we have poor wills there on the left. I heard poor wills sometimes on the eagle cam. You'd hear them at night. Poor will, poor will, poor will. And then common nighthawk on the right. Out at the east end of the valley again, you'll get nighthawks. And of course our owls. So we've got a long-eared owl on the top left, as opposed to the great horned owl next to it on the top. And then down at the bottom we have saw-whets, big golden eyes. And then next to that on the lower right we've got the western screech owl. And they don't screech. They've got a monotonic call, just 7 notes. Doot, 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 doot. It's not doot, but hoo, 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 hoo. And as opposed to, now saw-whets too, I've seen saw-whets up here, up around Bluff Lake more. They are cool little birds. I was once camping up at Bluff Lake, and I heard them, and I stepped out, and they almost landed on my head next to our tent. It was the coolest owl experience. And finally, of course, we have our spotted owls. Now, these are California spotted owls, and even amongst those, you can see the distribution of those. Even amongst those, you can see that tiny purple dot that is the San Bernardino Mountains, also in the San Gabriel Mountains. But within the San Bernardinos, they're limited to like Lake Arrowhead blue jay coming our direction, and then right over at our Bear Paw Reserve at the base of Mill Creek Canyon and Forest Falls Turnoff. That's one of our wildlands preserves there. Have any of you ever been to Bear Paw Reserve? It's really worth going there. If you just write to wildlandsconservancy.org and ask if you can get in there, we'll give you the gate code, and you can drive in there. You'll have the whole place to yourself. But it's really a beautiful big leaf maple, bay laurel woodland with this cascading waterfall, just ephemeral waterfall that comes out of the mountains, and beautiful stuff. And we have several spotted owl nests there. The nests are really fun, and they're I've gone out on the nesting surveys for spotted owls a number of times with our Forest Service friends and others. But so typically you'll go out and you make the call, and they'll come down and respond to your call. So it's it's called a bark hoot. Woo, 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 something like that. And so I've actually called them in with that poor imitation of their call before. And they'll come in, and they're looking around, and then the biologists will have white lab mice that they let that lab mouse go, and the owl will be totally focused on that mouse, completely ignoring the fact that you're just 10 feet away. And so you can get lots of pictures and do their thing. And then if they have chicks on a nest, they'll take that white lab mouse up and fly it to the nest. And that's why they use a white lab mouse, because you can see them fly back up to the nest with the mouse to the chicks. So anyway, there aren't many more than 100 or so spotted owls total in Southern California mountains, and they're very much at risk. Woodpeckers. Again, we have 10 species of woodpeckers. That's remarkable. If you tell that to birders anywhere, they're going to say, what? 10 species. 8 of those are breeding here. So right off the top, we have our acorn woodpeckers. They're probably our most common one up here. What's cool about acorn woodpeckers is that they are polyandrous. Polyandrous. So that's a female on the left. She's got a little bit of black between the red and white on the forehead. See that little patch of black? That identifies the female. And then the male, the red and white touch each other right above the beak. So that's a male. But they're polyandrous. So there's a queen, the female, and she's got a harem of males at her beak and call, if you will. So, and the males then will all protect the acorn storage tree. But there's one dominant female. She's the queen bee, and she's rules the roost. So I kind of like that. It switches up the gender roles a little bit. And it's all beautiful and natural. And then right next to that, of course, we have a northern flicker. I just saw one on your front feeder out here. Okay, so here's your test. So that one top left, red-breasted sapsucker. The sapsuckers are a cool bunch in that you'll see their holes that they drill around the tree, and then the sap comes out, and they'll come back and lick up the sap with the sugars, right? It's just like a maple tree. And so they love to do that, especially this one's up at Bluff Lake, and you'll see the red-breasted sapsuckers are common up there. They like to drill the willows and the black cottonwoods and things like that. Next to that, top right, we have the Lewis's woodpecker. This is a winter visitor, and they're kind of eruptive. They'll come down in big flocks some winters, and some winters not at all. A couple winters ago, we had 40 plus down at Oak Glen, which was kind of surprising, and they hung around all winter long. Then they took off back to parts north. It's kind of an unusual woodpecker. They behave like flycatchers. They'll fly out, catch a bug on the fly, and come back, unlike your other seed-eating woodpeckers. And they're very gregarious, so they're usually in a small flock. And then down lower left, we've got one of my faves, the Williamson sapsucker. This is typically a more high elevation woodpecker up in our forest from 8,000 up to 10,000 feet in lodgepole, even limber pine forest. But they do occur down here around Bluff Lake in the lodgepole pines right around the lake. They're cavity nesters there. And this is a male. The female is all brown. They're so dimorphic that they used to be considered separate species from each other. Until we figured out, oh, that's just male and female. And then another real cutie, the white-headed woodpecker here, commonly about here around Big Bear Lake. Just for test, on the top left, hairy and downy. They're both very similar, striped faces and speckled wings, white down the back of the between the shoulders and down the back on both of them. Hairy is big and hairy, and downy is tiny and downy. And that's how, and you can see the size of the beak is very different between the two. Okay? Down below those, well, and then on the right we have the Nuttall's woodpecker. This is all barred down the back and wings, and a little bit on the front and the belly and sides is the Nuttall's woodpecker. And then over in the lower left, we have something that's kind of rare up here in Big Bear. You'll get it up on the backside into Rosemine Valley and the Joshua Tree Pinyon Woodland down there. That's our ladder-backed woodpecker. It's really a desert species, but it gets right up on the eastern slope, eastern side of Big Bear. Flycatchers. Okay, here's your test. So 12 species of flycatchers. Now, flycatchers are notoriously difficult, right? Especially some of them. But that top left, ash-throated flycatcher, really got a big bump head on him, and that ashy throat, just a pale, light yellow belly. Below that, we have the western kingbird, bright yellow, less of a crown on it than the ash-throated. Top right, we've got Zeiss phoebe, all brown with a black tail and black little, you can see the primary feathers are black. And that's really spring and fall down here. Sometimes winter, but then they'll move down in elevation in winter months. And then finally, lower right, western wood pewee. Very nondescript, a little bit of a sort of gray-white tuxedo going on. These are ones that you hear more often than you'll actually see them. And my favorite of our flycatchers is the olive-sided. So larger than those western phoebes, pretty good size actually. Used to be all in the genus Empidonax, which was notoriously tough. Now they moved it into Contopus cooper. I can't keep up with the Latin names. They keep changing them on me. But you can see that the olive-sided, oh, and this one has a very distinctive call. It used to be relatively common in the summer months here in Big Bear Valley, and now it's become quite rare. I don't know if you hear it down here at all anymore, but you'll still hear a few up at Bluff Lake. It does a call that I render as quick 3 beers. Quick 3 beers! Quick 3 beers! And so it's a very distinctive call. But this one you can see is a neotropical migrant, right? It breeds up in the Canadian boreal forests down into the Sierras and the Rockies, right? And we've got a little dot where it breeds here. And then it migrates all through that yellow area down into Central America and South America, right? So this one, the fact that it's become so rare over the last 40 years here, I think is a sign of deforestation in its wintering grounds, right? It's nesting in areas that I've seen just denuded and converted to coffee plantations and palm oil, to the degree that it underscores the importance for us all, if we care about birds, to do bird-friendly coffee. And I know Chirp has a whole array there of certified bird-friendly coffees. This is a certification done by the Smithsonian Migratory Bird Center and all of their research. They go out and they'll certify that these coffee beans are coming from sustained, shade-grown, tropical forest areas. And so it's a real important thing to do. It costs a little bit more, but not much more than Pete's or Starbucks out of the Stater Brothers. So really it's worth it to pay the extra buck just for your cup of coffee. Speaking of migratory neotropical migrants, you don't think of the American robin as being a neotropical, but it is. So in the family Turdidae, the Turdidae family of birds, birders call them turds, right? So, and it's spelled like turd. So Turdus migratorius is the robin. And it's one of my few birds that I've seen down in like Panama, Costa Rica, when I'm down there and I'm yearning for a bird, from my home country. And there it is in middle of January. I've seen them all the way into April down there. And then they'll migrate their way back north. In the middle there, we have 2 thrushes. We've got the varied thrush on top and the hermit thrush. Both of these are primarily winter visitors. Hermits might stick around, but the varied thrush is a winter visitor down here. Really pretty, beautiful birds. And then on the right there, we've got the mountain bluebird. Again, it's a bird that's declining for some reason. I'm not sure why, but they used to be much more abundant on the east end of the valley in the pinyon pine woodlands and things like that. And then western bluebird down on the bottom. And both and western bluebirds, mountain bluebirds, robins are all neotropical. So they're spending their winter down in Acapulco and Oaxaca and, drinking margaritas, and then they'll fly northwards. Okay, warblers. 9 species of warblers. Top left, we've got our butterbutts, otherwise known as yellow-rumped warblers, but we call them butterbutts. In the middle top, we've got the Wilson's warbler with that black cap. I'll forgive it that both my first 2 wives were last name Wilson. What are the odds of that? And then below that Wilson's warbler, we have a yellow warbler. On the right-hand side, we've got the black-throated gray, and 3 of them today. They are beautiful. I love them. They're really cute guys. And then down in the bottom left, we've got the orange-crowned warbler, and good luck seeing the orange crown on that puppy. Okay, so sparrows and kin, the Emberizidae family. We've got 16 species altogether. I think 12 are breeding. We'll start with the big ones, and you don't think of them as sparrows, but they are the towhees, right? So we have the green-tailed towhee on the left, and these are really cool birds, common out around the sagebrush and meadows of Baldwin Lake, the east end of the valley, but also up to Bluff and typically around meadow edges of the forest. Okay, so, but we'll get them down here too, together with the spotted towhees in the middle. Spotted towhees are pretty cool. We used to lump them all together as rufous-sided towhees, and then they were split, the western ones, spotteds, from the eastern, I guess do they still call those rufous-sideds on the East Coast? They don't have the spots, though. Ours are a lot more handsome. Notice the red eyes on those babies. And then on the right side, we have the fox sparrow, whose call is really tough to distinguish from the green-tailed, and they occur together up at Bluff. It's a big spotted sparrow, large marge, and so pretty distinctive in that way, and kind of rare. Not going to see those very many places. So, sparrows everywhere, but seldom seen in the air. They're always on the ground. Have you noticed? And they, even here around your feeders, they'll hop down and get the stuff that falls down to the ground under the feeder, where they do a little kick scratch. The entire family has this particular way of scratching. They do a kick scratch on the ground, and then they'll peck up whatever they can kick up. So it's unique to that family of birds, the kick scratch feeding method. So we've got in the middle top, we have the chipping sparrow, and then below that, the lark sparrow, really beautiful facial markings. And down at the bottom, middle, we have the white-crowned sparrow, which is a winter visitor for us. On the upper right, we have dark-eyed juncos. It's a sparrow, but dark-eyed junco. My students call them executioner birds because they're carrying, they go around in these black hooded heads. And then below that, we've got a vesper sparrow. They're kind of rare up here. You'll see them out around Baldwin Lake. Identifiable by a little rufous shoulder patch, hard to see, but more easily identified by the white tail rectrices. The feathers on both sides of the tail are all white. So easy to pick out that way. And they nest right in the sagebrush next to the ground out around Baldwin Lake. And then finally on the left-hand side there, brewers. Very good, head of the class. Notable in that it has no noteworthy markings. It's all gray and pretty drab, but the calls are quite loud and vocal and prolonged. They can do a really extended call, 15 seconds or so sometimes when they're breeding. So brewer sparrow. We had a big contest between California and Texas to where it was going to be as many birds as we could tally in 24 hours. And so all the top birders in California, all the top birders in Texas got together, and they all started at dark 100 in the morning doing owls and stuff. The California team started down at Salton Sea pre-dawn and then worked their way up, made one stop near Big Morongo, I think, and then they flew in a small chartered plane, land in Big Bear. They all get out. We'd pre-reserved 8-passenger minivans to pick them up and raced out to Baldwin Lake and got all these weird sparrows and stuff that they couldn't get anywhere else, and woodpeckers and so on. And then they flew off to parts north and ended up in Northern California going into dusk and nighttime doing spotted owls and who knows what up there. But California beat Texas. Yeah. So, but the reason that they were doing that and they made Big Bear the stop was Big Bear is so biodiverse for its birds. This was one of their strategic places where they could knock off a bunch of targeted species that you couldn't get all in one place otherwise. Finally, I'll close out with our finches and grosbeaks. Again, this is just a nice little test for these Carpodicus finches are tough. They all look the same pretty much. But that top left, it's either purple or Cassins. I do too. And I noticed in the Cornell Ornithology photos, they mixed it up and they had one of the same photos for both species. So if they can screw it up, then we can too. So generally, I think that's probably a purple finch on the upper left. And then that's a house finch with the streaky breasts and streaky flanks on the upper right. Pine siskin down on the lower left. These are real cuties. They do breed here, but mostly they're wintering. And then, and then down lower right, we have the red crossbill, where the beaks, on all the finches, the beaks kind of come across each other, the upper mandible and lower mandible, like a scissor. And that enables them to literally cut and kind of cut open their fruits and get seeds and things like pliers or something. It's unique to that family. We have a couple of grosbeaks also in the finch family. Top right, we've got the evening grosbeak, which is a winter visitor. And then black-headed grosbeaks down below, lower right. They're very cute at your feeders. They love those sunflower seeds and stuff. And the babies have this little pathetic mewing call. Ew, 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 feed me, feed me. And then top left, we have something that's pretty rare around here, but increasingly seen. The liver-colored tanager, otherwise known as hepatic tanager. That's what hepatic means, right? Referring to their liver.
So would that be like Cactus Flats?
Yeah. Yeah, they're really more of a desert disjunct for us, but you might see them up on the east end of the valley, around Springs. And then finally the western teenagers down at the bottom. I love these guys. Again, they are neotropical migrants, and their numbers have been steadily declining over the last several decades. And I can't help but think it's deforestation down in their wintering territories. So once again, I urge you all to try to clean up your coffee drinking and encourage you to check out the bird-friendly coffees. So I'll close with a mountain specialty. This is our mountain quail. We've all seen the California quail with the little curly Q top knot. These guys have two linear plumes on the crest, and they're pretty much a mountain endemic species. So you see in their range is up through the Sierras and Cascades. West Coast specialty, not even over in the Rockies, right? Just West Coast mountains. And you see that little dot, the transverse mountain range line that comes across the bottom. That would be us and the San Gabriels. And so also then down into the San Jacinto Mountains and somewhat extending down into the Sierra San Pedro Martir of northern Baja. But again, that's sort of a southern disjunct on this mountain island that is the San Bernardino Mountains. Very distinctive calls. It's monotonic, and they throw their head back and they do this. You guys do it better than I do. Quirk? I like it like quirk. Quirky, quirk, quirk. But it's higher pitched and it's monotonic, okay? You can really pick out their call. We have some that nest on Pisgah Peak right above our place in Oak Glen. But generally they're higher up. So with that, I will let you go. And here's our beautiful little mountain quail to say goodbye. Happy birding.